Welcome back to Swordman Josh Gaming, and I've never done one of these virtually like this deck tech. So this is going to be a first try at it. The new Ashiok that just came out, the Ashiok Nightmare Muse, absolute cactus, talked to me and said he wanted to be interested in getting into some 60 card formats, and the new Ashiok inspired me to build a Pioneer deck. This is, I believe, a homebrew deck. I haven't seen anything else like it. Took a couple things from here and there. So it is technically Esper Control, but most people who run Esper Control would be running a lot of the Teferis. We are running the Ashiok suite. So just wanted to go into this deck tech of what I'm building. Like I said, I'm doing it this way because I don't have the cards yet. All of them are in the mail. I'm missing, in terms of everything that's on its way, I'm missing one Torrential Gear Hulk. But we'll get into what this deck is trying to do, and I have goldfished it quite a few times to success, I think. But goldfishing doesn't tell you really how good a deck is until you actually get to play it in real life. So what are we trying to do? Basically, we're trying to make it so our opponents can't play much. So we have a couple different win cons in here, and we're basically putting everything they have in exile rather than in the graveyard, or we're trying to. So we're running counter spells. I don't know why these are Japanese. We're running 2 Ashiok's Erasure. This is the one that when it counters a spell, it's an enchantment when it comes into play, and then your opponent can't play any cards of the same exact name. For counter spells, we're running 3 Didn't Say Pleases. Since we want to get their cards in their graveyard so we can exile them, Didn't Say Please has the bonus of having them put the top 3 cards of their library into their graveyard. We're running 2 Whirlwind Denials. So this is a great little one for if anybody tries to storm off, and it also will stop Thassa's Oracle from going off, because not only is it for spells, but it's also for abilities your opponents control. They have to pay 4 or they don't go off. For hand disruption, we are running a full playset of Thought Erasure. So we get to look at, I'm not running Thought Seized, it's a little out of my price range, but Thought Erasure will work well for us. So we get to pick a non-land card from their hand and have them discard that card, and we do get to surveil on top of it. So that allows us to get through some extra lands or dump some stuff that we don't possibly need. So that being a surveil, it's almost like card draw / card choice. So we'll go into the card draw. We are running 2 Hieroglyphic Illumination. It allows us to draw 2 cards at instant speed, but if it's early game and we need to dig for answers, we can cycle it for just 1 blue and draw a card versus 4 for 2. We are running 4 ops as well. So to protect ourselves while we try to set up a mill suite, we are currently running 2 copies of Bile Blight. Of course, these can be changed out for multiple other things, but this is at instant speed, where a target creature and all other creatures with the same name get -3/-3 till end of turn. So it will take care of a bunch of mana dorks for green. It'll take care of any tribal deck you might run across, knight, tribal, or anything else. We are running 3 cast down. We are running 2 Murderous Riders, which is basically what I have substituted in for Hero's Downfall. So if we're not going to end up running, if we're going to end up running into a Planeswalker type deck, the sideboard I haven't completely fleshed out yet, but there is 2 more Hero's Downfall that I'll have in the sideboard for this deck. So we can just take out, since all of the Planeswalkers are legendary, you can easily just sub out 2 cast downs for 2 Hero's Downfall. Bounce spells for disruption, also we're running 2 copies of Brazen Borrower, and then to get our stuff back if we need it, and also for a finisher, we're running 2 Torrential Gear Hulks. Now, getting their cards into exile. We have discard and Didn't Say Please, which is all well and good. We have discard and Thought Erasure. The old Ashiok, the War of the Spark Ashiok, not the OG Ashiok, which you could conceivably take one of these 3 Ashiok Dream Renders out and put in 1 Ashiok Nightmare Weaver, which wouldn't be horrible. It mills a little bit slower, or exiles a little bit slower. But Ashiok Dream Render, spells and abilities your opponents control don't cause their controllers to search their libraries. I don't know how much, since there's no fetch lands in Pioneer, that first ability is good in some situations and it's not good in others. However, the second one is target player puts the top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard, then exile each opponent's graveyard. This is used a lot of times for self-mill strategy, but in our case, we are going to take all of this and put it, have our opponent mill everything and constantly be exiling their graveyard. We are running 2 Narset Parter Avails, so that way we can slow down anybody who's wanting to draw a lot of cards, and it also allows us to dig. So each opponent can't draw more than 1 card each turn, and then the -2 that you can trigger twice off Narset is to look at the top 4 cards of your library, and you may reveal a non-creature, non-land card from among them and put it into your hand. If you notice, we are running very few creatures. We're running 6 creatures, and then of course we're running the land. So everything else in here, Narset should always get us something decent off of her triggered ability. One of our win cons, besides just damaging out with Brazen Borrower, Torrential Gearhawk, or Murderous Rider, which is a possibility, but what we're splashing for is for Kaya Orzhov Usurper. So we have a little bit of life gain over here with Murderous Rider, and Kaya will also give us the life gain that we need if we go into a longer game. So her +1 ability is to exile up to 2 target cards from a single graveyard, and then you gain 2 life for each creature card that was exiled that way. It's all fine and dandy. If they have some stuff in their graveyard we can exile, works great. Or I suppose if we want to, we're not going to recur a Murderous Rider or a Brazen Borrower, we can always get that life gain off of exiling out of our graveyard also. The -1 ability is to exile target non-land permanent with converted mana cost 1 or less. This will get rid of all of the mana dorks if she hits early and slows down some green ramps and mana ramp decks. But her kill option, since we're going to be exiling so many cards, is her -5 ability, which is she deals damage to target player equal to the number of cards that player has in exile, and then you gain that much life. So it can be a really big swing. I don't think for Ashiok, here's another one of our mill cards that we didn't talk to, and the one that inspired the deck, so I saved her for last. She's also one of the highest CMCs in this deck, except for the Torrential Gearhawk, of course. But she comes down with 5 loyalty, which is great. And her +1 ability is to protect herself. So our other Planeswalkers can't protect themselves, but Ashiok can. Or this Ashiok can. It creates a 2/3 blue and black nightmare creature token that whenever it attacks or blocks target opponent, exiles the top 2 cards of their library. So even more exile. The -3 is to return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Then that player discards a card. Or exiles a card, from their hand. So if they are hellbent and we can return 1 card to their hand, we know that card's immediately going to end into exile also. Her -7 I don't think will ever play. But if it does pop off, it's basically you may cast up to 3 face-up cards in opponent's exile, and you can pay them without paying any mana cost. So we can use our opponents, all their exiled cards against them. I think the games will be over before you ever get to this -7. That's 3 turns with this Ashiok on the board, plussing her up. We have nothing to proliferate. We have 3 turns for Kaya to kill, and both Ashiok and Narset both just down tick. So let me know what you think about this deck. I suppose I should talk about the land base that we're running. To keep this as fast as possible, we are running quite a bit of pain land, so to speak of. We're running 4 Watery Graves, 4 shock lands here. Our other pain lands is we're running 2 Godless Shrines, and then we are running 4 Fabled Passages. These Fabled Passages could possibly go down to 2 or 3. I have yet to play this and see how it works out. you could possibly, I'm thinking about taking out one or two of these for choked estuary, just so we can get some blue and more blue and black online. But these are really to go be able to find any of the basics that you need, since a lot of this stuff's double blue, double black, or to go get this one single solitary plains in case you have Kaya in your hand and you want to get her on the board. We're also running 2 drowned catacombs. So the watery graves, the fetid pools, and the godless shrines will all make it so that way the drowned catacombs come into play untapped. Should be a pretty high probability of that. Choked estuary is reveal a island or swamp from your hand, or it comes into play tapped. So it's a different variation of drowned catacomb. Fetid pool allows us early game. It does come into play tap, which is pretty detrimental, but you can cycle it later in the game if you don't need the land. Glacial Fortress, of course, comes into play tapped unless you control a plains or an island. And we are running 3 plains, 3 swamps, or 3 islands, 3 plains, and 1 swamp. So the full breakdown for this right now, if you count out the pips that you can make, I believe it's 13 blue mana across all these multiple dual lands, 13 black mana, and 5 white mana to be able to make this deck run. So I'd be curious what everybody had to think about this, if they had any suggestions for changing this deck up. Sideboard, I know I'm going to be running some Tyrant Scorn, some Hero's Downfall, and I'm not sure what else at this point in time, because I'm not exactly sure what the meta is going to look like when I bring this deck out. But I can't wait to play this deck, and like I said, all the cards are in the mail except for a Torrential Gearhulk. And I mean, this deck's going to be a lot of fun to play, whether it wins or loses, just to try to play. It's basically Dimir control with just a little bit of a splash of Esper. Whereas typical Esper control is a whole lot of Azorius with just a little bit of black splashed, from what I understand, for the Thought Seizes and the Fatal Pushes and things of that nature. This is a fairly budget Pioneer deck because we aren't running Fatal Pushes and we aren't running Thought Seizes, but I think it should still be able to keep up. So if you liked what you saw here and want me to do some other deck techs and this nature with the view, let me know in the comments, and I can make these decks easier instead of having to wait for all the paper copies. It does get expensive making Magic decks. I do have some more Magic decks coming. I have a big surprise coming here probably in the next couple of weeks for a new Commander deck. That's a tribal that actually EDH Rec does not show anybody making this tribe at all. There are 0 decks for this tribe. So can't wait to show that one off. And I hope everybody